Peace, peace. Greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, aka Mr. Just the Facts. I got the Be the Power team in the building. I got my brother Josh. I got my brother Logic. I got my brother Ali on deck. What's going on, fam? Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the share button at Ice Cube, because we building tonight, right? We want him to see that there's some issues with his plan. There's some things that we did find good in the plan, but overall, we thought that we should come on and give our breakdown to what we see, right? So again, hit the like button, family. Share this out to everybody that you know, because this is something that's going to essentially affect us, right? If it gets implemented or not, either way, I am of the opinion that if you put something like this in play, it gives the anti-reparationists the opportunity to say, see, these people are not serious, and they can use someone like Ice Cube and put him in the front, because he was just on MSNBC being interviewed by Ari Melber the other day. So they get to put him on the front and use him as a voice to say that this thing is not, this thing is not doable at all. This thing is not doable. And then we got to start from scratch instead of just getting it right the first time. So I'm going to get into it. I'm going to share my screen. I got my PowerPoint ready to go, so bear with me a second. Let me see. Hold on. Let's get into this thing. I want to start with this paper from Ice Cube, Contract to Black America. I think that it is important that we touch on this, because like I was explaining earlier, we don't want anybody to stop the progress of this reparations movement that's going on right now. And we're going to need full-throated reparationists to really push this thing forward. And if we can have or take the opportunity to educate someone like Ice Cube on why this project, the way it's constructed now, wouldn't move the needle forward, then I believe that we should do that. So let's get into this thing, right? So it reads, new approach in each area supports the success of the others. This contract with Black America will provide conceptual approaches in several areas, including addressing Black opportunity and representation, bank lending and finance reform, judicial and public police reform, expansion of the 13th Amendment rights, police reform, reform in Hollywood, and I'm going to stop right there. These two things that I have underlined caught my attention. Maybe one of my brothers can help me out on this panel, but I do not understand what an expansion of 13th Amendment rights were. When you watch when you watch the documentary, I believe Michelle Alexander is featured in that documentary on the 13th. It is breaking down the loophole that the 13th Amendment uses in the incarceration state of our people, meaning they make us the criminals and then they lock us up because of this 13th Amendment loophole that basically says that the only way someone can be under any servitude is if they are convicted of a crime. So when it says expansion of 13th Amendment rights, again, what do y'all want to touch on that?
Let's look at the 13th Amendment. Let's just read it real quick. Anybody can pull it up. I don't have to share the screen. Just Google the text of the 13th Amendment. So let's read it and see if there are any rights in there to be expounded upon. So it's Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. From what I remember, and I don't want to go over into whatever it is you're talking about, But from what I remember, from reading the contract with Black America, it appears that what he wants to do, or whoever the authors are of that particular document wants to do, is take out the exception provision where it says, except as punishment for crime where the party shall have been duly convicted. In other words, they want the idea of slavery or involuntary servitude completely abolished, even state level, or how we would say state property. You don't want to be a slave of any individual, and you don't want to be the slave of the state. So I believe that's what they're talking about, is removing the exception provision out of the Section 1 of the 13th Amendment.
So expansion would be the wrong word.
Yeah,
Amending the 13th Amendment would be the proper word, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. I was confused, so I wanted to consult my team. All right, here we go. All right. Black opportunity and representation, the case for neo-reconstruction. I guess I'm going to read it. It says, neo-reconstruction is an aggressive initiative meant to redress past wrongs systemically imposed on Black Americans economically throughout many generations, wrongs that have had a severe negative impact on African Americans, both economically and educationally. The specific case and plan for neo-reconstruction is presented later in the document. A commission will immediately be formed and empowered to quickly put the plan into action. I want to pause right there. A commission will immediately be formed. Now, currently, there's a bill called HR 40 that's languishing in the House. It's been languishing for the past 30 years. And that bill is basically a call for a commission to already study reparations. So I don't know if this is something that they are addressing in later on in the document. I wasn't able to get through the whole thing. There was just certain things that I was just completely baffled by. Some things that I've seen that I like, but I was like, I'm really not understanding the whole of this. HR 40 is that commission that's already established. We just need revisions to HR 40. We don't need anything that becomes superfluous to what it is that we're trying to achieve, right? Has anybody come across this commission insofar as it being HR 40 in that document?
No, I haven't.
I didn't see it.
But one thing I want to say about that, right? The case for neo-construction, I'm going to go into what they said later on in the document.
Mm-hmm.
But the case for neo-construction, I think when you're building a case for something, it has to be built properly. So I don't think they make the case at all very well in this particular piece. There's some things that are like some fundamental historical, events that they've left out, and a lot of different structural things that are missing out of this document in and of itself. So what I see in this document is a very consistent pattern of just like, it's like a collage of stuff that they just wanted, a collage of policy that they're just throwing at it. Let me throw a whole bunch of stuff together. It's not really set up the way it needs to be set up. And I don't really understand, there is some good in these things, right? There's some good policies in here, but the way it's been constructed, as far as this calling it a contract with Black America, I don't understand how this is a contract for Black America. And I would like to just talk to the brother and see what was his thoughts behind producing such a document, why he thinks it's a contract for Black America, and why, I don't think Q wrote this, but whoever he had write this for him, I have some serious questions about it that I'll get into later. But as far as the commissions are historically done when you're doing large scale things. You do commissions just to have that type of organization and that structure. But in this particular contract, they don't specify how the commission will be formed, what it'll be set up to do. It's just very vague and loose language. That's one of the biggest problems I have with a lot of this stuff in here.
And also a contract is something that has terms and conditions and stipulations and do's and don'ts. And this reads more like a demand. And I think wording and framing is everything when you're putting something together and you are leaning on I mean, he said experts helped him refine this particular treatise, if we can call it that. Anyway, let me finish.
Can I make one? I'm going to add one thing.
Brother.
You know, it's interesting. We call this a contract with Black America, but you see, like when it comes time to talk about reparations or something like that, we see other groups get added. Now, I don't know if that's, what the reason behind adding those was because we always feel like when we ask for something specific, if we don't include somebody else, another group that may have been wrong, then we may not have enough support. Or, if we're just looking at it from a standpoint of, well, they were damaged too. So it's only if we want to do the right thing for people in general or everybody in America, that we need to remedy that group as well. Well, then if we're going to do that, then it should just be called contract with disadvantaged or, they have some type of grievous injustice against them. It shouldn't be called contract with Black America.
And that's what's coming up in the next thing that I'm about to read, because this part, it makes absolutely no sense, where it says, separately, a plan will also be devised to make Native Americans whole within the same timeline. Like, huh? But that speaks to what Brother Josh was just talking about. So this shouldn't be called a contract with Black America. I mean, it shouldn't have the name contract, period. But if anything, if you're going to use contract, it should be a contract with Black Americans and Native Americans. But there's another group, and I'm going to get to that as well. It says Black Americans will be compensated for the value of work contributed by their ancestors, while Native Americans will get back the true value or land promised to them in various treaties. For Black Americans to be eligible, they must provide documentation proving their descent from at least one enslaved person. They must also prove they have identified as Black or African American for at least 10 years prior to the institution of the reparations program. So in the words of Ice Cube, give me that beat, fool. This is a full-time Jack move. Because we know that they lifted that from the provisions that Dr. Darity has laid forth, which can also be found, I believe that's on the roadmap to reparations portion of ADOS 101. I'm pretty certain that it is. So this language is.
Let me hop in real quick. There's a lot of stuff to hop in. As y'all can see, we just on one paragraph, right? And it's already a lot of problems. But this is what if y'all read, this is what I want to get people used to doing, right? Whenever something like this is being presented to the public, it's your business, especially when you call yourself, invested in this movement and this push for pure reparations. It's your business to read stuff like this. Anytime. Now, people can kind of say, that's just Ice Cube, but that's a mistake, folks. Ice Cube is a very influential person. He has agency and he has connections, and this could be used in a way that could be harmful if you just try to dismiss it, right? The enemies of reparations will promote this because they'd be like, you know what? Yeah, let's promote this. If you have the real deal right here, and then you have something that may not, that misses the mark completely, the enemies of what it will really bring about justice will promote the thing that is the weakest, right?
That's right.
So a reparations program can be constructed, but it can be constructed poorly or perfectly. We have to read stuff like this so we know what is going on out there. All throughout this contract, you see them making the case, very clumsily, I might add, making the case, but they're building the case based on specific harms to Black folks, Native Black folks, to this country, but they want to include everyone else like Native Americans and things, right? So I two things, right? I don't want people to say, Ice Cube can't speak for us. He doesn't know enough. I don't think that's the right way to say that. I think what we should say is we need to get to our brother Ice Cube. Because once a brother has been speaking to the people, whether it's been through movies, whether it's been through music, he's been speaking to us for decades. He ain't finna be quiet. So the wisest thing to do is get to that brother. Whoever, somebody can contact somebody and get to that brother and say, listen, brother, that's not what it is, brother Q. Let me break this down to you. Somebody needs to sit down with that man and talk to him and say, this ain't it, brother Q. Because at the end of the day, that's our brother. You know what I'm saying? And the next thing is, I don't think grift is the proper word, because the grift means petty swindling or small scale swindling, petty or small, to engage in petty small scale swindling. This ain't no small scale stuff. We talking about a program that involves trillions of dollars. This ain't no petty small. If you look at the definition of grift, I'm just saying, it says to engage in small, petty, small scale swindling. This ain't small. This is a huge thing right here. So grift ain't doing the justice. What we're seeing, brother did the quote, is a full-time jack move. And we have to slow this thing down. And I don't think the brother Cube understands the magnitude of what he's presenting to the public, right? I can't fully say whether he read this, but I don't know. He's not communicating about this in the public so we can really know what the thought was behind it, what he's really thinking about. There's really no transparency with this thing. But, you know, somebody needs to get with that brother and say, listen, Q, there's well-constructed information out here to try to really get at the things that you are attempting to get at in this contract or in this so-called contract. How about you read this? How about you check this information out? Somebody needs to get to that brother, man, because to irritate the man will only further these type of actions and agenda moves.
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I'm gonna see if we could reach out to him. You know what I'm saying? Through the people that I know, I'm gonna see if we could get him and maybe have a dialogue with him. You know what I mean? And try to get certain information to see. The whole thing is we need, like we keep saying, we need people to be reparationists, which means we need people to be on code. We need people to be on the right message. You know, we need to be lockstep for the most part. I'm not saying everybody's going to agree 100% on everything. And even with a lot of what he has in here, even though he's not calling this a reparations proposal, it's like he's kind of avoiding the word reparations. I think he used the word one time in the document.
Two times.
Two times. But even this whole idea of a neo-reconstruction is kind of a way to go around using the reparations terminology, even though it's a reparations kind of, you know, kind of agenda that he has laid out there. But I think that it's more important, like you said, bro, it's more important for people to be on code. It's more important for us to be in sync with each other than to actually be, you know, trying to bring somebody down or tear them down. I think it's very important that we get, because like you said, first of all, that's a grown man. He's been in the public spotlight for many years, long before there was an ADOS movement. Like you say, he's not going to stop talking. People have egos, people paying taxes, people are citizens of the United States, and he's also an ADOS person as well. So at the end of the day, he's not going to be quiet. I don't see him as that type of person. So what will be best, I think, for us, when you're dealing with people who have the kind of agency that someone like him has, is to try to reel them in. Let's try to reel them in, and let's see if we can get them on the same page. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
And last thing before we move forward, real quick, let me just say this, right? Remember how Ice Cube, we have to take some responsibility. We created Ice Cube. Ice Cube is his own man, but he rose to where he's at because of us.
That's
so
right.
We have to deal with him in that same manner, right? And at the end of the day, I want people to understand, right? It is important to get people on message. That's the focus. Let's get before we totally decide who's an enemy, we have to really see what their objective is, right? So if this brother can be put on the path to pure reparations, that needs to be attempted. It needs to be attempted by everybody. If one person, just because you got to see messengers matter, right? We always say that messengers matter. So maybe you know, you might not be the right person to talk to Q. He might not want to talk to you. He might not like you. You know what I mean? It just is what it is. But he might not like, let's say it's me. He might not like me. And he might I don't want to talk to Logic, but he might talk to Ali. Ali may have just a different personality. And Ali could be saying the same thing I'm saying, but it's coming from him, not me. So you have to understand, at the end of the day, our goal is to forward the move to progress a pure reparations program. So understand that it's going to take different kind of tactics. We can't use the same tactic every time with everybody. We have to be patient and really analyze everybody that gets involved, because some people can be assets and some people can be liabilities. You don't really know until you take the time to fill them out and see.
Definitely. So I want to get to the Native American portion, and while this idea that adding Native Americans to this claim is, I mean, I just think it's asinine. Like that. There's no other word that I can come up with.
It is
asinine. And this is one of many articles that one can pull up. How Native Americans adopted slavery from white settlers, and how Black people in Indian territory were denied their rights even after their emancipation. So I'm going to read, right? It says, but the 13th Amendment did not free all Black enslaved people in the boundaries of modern day U.S. Members of the 5 Native American nations, the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole nations, known as the 5 tribes, owned Black slaves, then located outside the territorial boundaries of the U.S. in a region known as Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma. These sovereign nations were not affected by proclamations or constitutional amendments. Instead, separate treaties had to be made between the U.S. and these Native American nations, not only to free enslaved people, but also to formally end the American Civil War battles and antagonism between American and Native American troops. So this, I mean, matter of fact, this last part is important too. The fact that by the time of the Civil War, Black chattel slavery had been an element of life among the 5 tribes for decades is rarely discussed. It is, however, an important aspect of U.S. history, which serves to remind us of the complexity of colonialism, exploitation, and victimization that laid the foundations of our country. So there's no way that we should be adding Native Americans in a contract for Black America. This just makes absolutely no sense. Again, people, there are many articles written, there are books written about this very thing to those Aboriginal indigenous folk who try to claim that the 5 tribes were somehow Moorish tribes. This research refutes your claims. And even if you don't use the term Moor and you say that these 5 tribes were just Black Indian tribes, what are you really saying? That these Black Indian tribes enslaved their brothers from Africa who look like them? All of this foolishness has to be dealt with, and we're going to deal with it. So I was brought to a tweet. The sister, I'm going to get to her tweet. And she tagged me in the tweet, and I thought that this was very, very important. This is Mayor Jacob Frey, and it says that Minneapolis Mayor Frey, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan highlight progress in 3 Minneapolis shelters. It says, we're moving forward with plans for 3 new shelters in Minneapolis. They include a culturally sensitive shelter with services for Native people opening this year, a women's shelter, and the shelter for veterans who are medically vulnerable. So I want to get to the sister's tweet, and then we can touch on that. The sister, Peaches, is Black. Shout out to the sister. She says 30% of the homeless in Minneapolis were Black, according to a 2018 study. Are there any shelter services for Black people? And my little note on the side says, why are we always trying to add other people into our justice claims? The white and Latino Democratic establishment already does that. We do not need that from our own, right? So when we're looking at this contract for Black America, why is it that if you're trying to flesh out who specifically you're targeting, you are then adding another group who has already received billions of dollars from this government. They have their own lands and reservations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They do their own business here. While we are locked out, 30%, and I didn't fact check this, and I should have, the system, but most of ADOS is very well researched. 30% of the homeless in Minneapolis were Black, according to a 2018 study. Are there any shelter services for Black people, right? Why is it that we could find a shelter service for Native Americans only, for women only, right? And for veterans only, but we don't find anything for us only. When it comes to us, everybody else has to be included. And this is the problem that we're finding throughout the whole reparations discussion. If any one of y'all wanted to speak on that, let me know.
Yeah,
I'm going to get to a point that's very important when I say that the Democratic establishment already does that.
Well,
I think it's. Go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
No. I just would say, well, I think that, I don't know why this is in this specific contract. It's really, the contract is really hard to really sit down and just get through all of it, because it's just such a confusing document, because it's all over the place, right? And it's scattered. And when these type of policies, like this type of contract doesn't really speak to how things get funded, how things are supported, right? The difference between local, state, and federal government, fiscal policy. Like, you're just making this blanket so-called contract and just saying a lot of stuff. Like, you're not really speaking to how you're going to get any of this stuff done. And when you're doing it that way, it makes it seem like elementary. You know what I mean? Like, it's written like somebody's just ranting. I want this to happen, and I want that to happen, and look at this, and we're 40% of the homeless. Now, if you really was serious about that thing, you could have got to my man, what's his name, Ted Hayes. Like, you could have got with that man. Like, he's been doing this homeless thing for decades, man. And you could have really fleshed that thing out and really had an address to the homeless situation and the American descendants of the Black community. And you could have really spoke to that thing. But now, like, because of the lack of study and research and really a real sincere attempt to get with the right people, you've made some clumsy attempt to address the situation, and you brought in a people who have government to government relations.
Facts.
And they have an entire separate type of communication line with the United States of America, and they get to double dip. So they're upset. And you instead of us, we've been kept from the table for so long. They don't like what they got when they sat down at the table, but you want to bring them back to the table when we never was at the table in the first place.
But the crazy part is, bro, they got up from the table. They got up. The 5 civilized tribes got up from the table. A lot of them renounced the treaties that they already had with the Union so they could fight with the Confederacy. So how are we putting them on the same level with us? We got to also understand, we talked about the history when the South lost, and understand they wanted to preserve the Confederacy because they had a high population of enslaved folks. I gotta give it to brother Antonio Moore. When I watched this video, I wasn't even aware of the history, but he caused me to go digging and reading through some other material, and you see that we were a large percentage of their total population, of their total, I think it was 15% of the Cherokee population. And I want to say out of those tribes, one of them, we were like 18% of the population was enslaved folks. And when it was time to free us and emancipate us, they didn't even do that with the rest of the South who lost, with the rebels who lost. You know what they did? They had to come and get new treaties with America, and the treaties, part of the treaty with America was they would free us. But that was 1866. That was not 1865 when we were freed from the grips of bondage in the southern states. So I don't understand how we get to, talk about them in the same way, like as far as being a disadvantaged group or screwed over group. Now, I also don't want to blanket all Native Americans with the same thing, because that's not every tribe. But no group made the contribution, and no group suffered the ills that was giving nothing in reparations, that was giving no land. We didn't get half of Texas. We didn't get half of Florida. We didn't get half of Virginia or half of California or something like that. We didn't get half of state. We didn't get nothing. We got zero. We haven't even got the knife out our back. You know.
Let me say this: when you can't speak about homelessness, right? I'm gonna say two things. You can't speak about homelessness if you do the history of homelessness in America. There was never a homeless situation or a homeless issue until the Civil War ended, and the emancipated 4 million people were emancipated into homelessness. Do that history, fam. If you go back a few shows that we did, we really went in on that already. A couple shows, we really went in on that already. We talked about how our people was emancipated into homelessness. Frederick Douglass talked about it a couple times in a few speeches. You can hear him talk about how we were emancipated into poverty and homelessness. So the poverty situation in America and America's homeless situation is rooted into our history. It started with us. So, and then the last point I want to make in regards to this whole Indian business is that people don't understand. They look and they talk about Indian history individualistically, and they don't understand the Indians were governments. They were nations. You understand? So they fought a war as a nation. We didn't fight no war with America. Right. We built America as enslaved, disadvantaged Americans. You understand? Because some of our people were free here. Every one of us wasn't slaves. We broke that down on a previous show as well. How we had citizenship and was functioning and operating as citizens with disabilities for ever since America was born. So we did all of that. They didn't do that. And what they did was government versus government. When you talk about Cherokee, you're not talking about an individual. You're talking about a nation. When you talk about Chickasaw, that's a nation. That's a government. They had chiefs. They had tribunals. They had councils. They had a whole entire political system set up. And they did politics with the American government. We never had that. So they don't get to come to the table with us. They got to do their own thing until we get our stuff right.
Fact. Brother right. Ali.
Yes. Well, what I was going to say is just really going right at this particular tweet, man. I think that's a slap in the face, because the point that she's raising is that George Floyd was the person with the knee in the neck. Mm-hmm. And these people are making, these organizations and putting these, these set asides for Indians. What does it say?
Indians, Native Americans, and women.
Right. So everybody gets to benefit.
I'm sorry, Native Americans, women. It was 3 of them.
Yeah, it's 3 of them. But it ain't whoever it is.
And veterans, my bad.
Veterans. So veterans could be anybody. Could be some of us. It could be whoever, right? So everybody always gets to. It's like they always putting everything on top of our plight. So everybody gets to skate in on our plights, our fights, our achievements, the things that are supposed to be for us. Everyone else gets to benefit off of. And so, just tying it into the whole Ice Cube piece. He's for whatever the reason, I don't know if he did it or somebody else put that in there, but that Native American piece is out of place. Like, it's out of place. It shouldn't be in that particular document. This is supposed to be a contract with Black America, which is really just basically like a Black agenda of sorts that he put together and threw some reparations points in there. But it's supposed to be for the descendants of slavery, because even at a specific point in his document, he's talking about who the recipients of restitution should be, and that would be the American descendants of slavery in his own words. But that's what he says. So I don't understand why in a Black agenda you have something in there about Native Americans being made whole. They have their own representation, like Brother Ware else said. These are nations of people. They have governments and everything. They don't add treaties with the United States. They have the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They don't need us to represent them. I don't understand. I don't know what our people are thinking about. Those folks don't need us to represent them at all. They have their own things.
I think part of what may, and I would love to hear his explanation of that, but I think part of what may have been a motivating factor behind that is trying to dispel or kind of dismiss some of the rebuttals that preemptively, like people will say, well, what about the Native Americans? They, we have to pay, just like Joe Biden. I think he may have been trying to throw that out there preemptively, like, okay, we'll do Native Americans later. So, but I would love to hear what he has to say about that. But all I know is when you're talking about the descendants of slaves or people that descend from the institution of slavery, I don't want any language that includes some type of benefit going to someone who may have been the slave owners.
Right.
I don't think we put enough emphasis on that part of the history, because a lot of us have always run around talking about, man, I'm part this tribe and I got this in my ancestry. A lot of us just aren't aware of the history that some tribes, especially the major tribes, did not allow us citizenship in those tribes, fought tooth and nail to prevent us from having citizenship. Yep. In 2017, I believe Cherokees were trying to bar a lot of our people from citizenship. So you may have Cherokee in or Choctaw or whatever in your DNA, but it just like we got European in our DNA, it may be from the same result. We may have had ancestors that were on the reservation, but that wasn't necessarily by choice. Even if it was, it may be upon emancipation and not having anywhere else to go. So I'm not trying to come at them from that, but we just got to keep it honest. If you're going to put them in our reparations claim, we have to address these issues.
But that's a real point of contention, though, because at the end of the day, whatever business they have with the United States, they've been handling it. They can handle it.
They just got awarded Oklahoma through the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
And not only that, they got billions of dollars through the coronavirus stimulus specific for them. Meanwhile,
even though Black Americans were the hardest hit, they get the benefits.
That's right.
I say, even though Black Americans, according to all accounts, were the hardest hit by COVID-19, Native Americans were the ones with the set aside.
That's right. Black Americans were getting their stimulus money absorbed into their child support arrears. So let's get into this next part. Because it speaks to what I said about don't do what the Democrats are trying to do when you're putting together something that supposedly represents our people. It says Joe Biden wants reparations for Blacks expanded to include Native Americans. And let's read. Joseph R. Biden passed Wednesday during a virtual town hall event with the NAACP on the chance to endorse reparations for Black Americans, saying that such a package must also include Native Americans. Pressed on the issue, Mr. Biden, the presumed Democratic presidential nominee, said he supports the concept, but said he wants to allow studies on the issue to play out before he goes all in on direct payments to African Americans. They quote him, "The answer is it depends on what it was and will it include Native Americans as well," he said. And we just laid out a case, and Brother Antonio Moore has laid out that case. Sister Yvette Carnell has also laid out the case that it most certainly should not include them. So that aspect, we hope that if this brother does watch that, or if Derek Hamilton, whose name is signed to this document, is watching that, know that if this is a contract for Black America and we have some voice in Black America, that element of the contract has to be removed. So let's get into this next part. Mandatory civil rights and anti-racist. This is from the document. This is from Ice Cube's document right here. A contract with Black America. Mandatory civil rights and anti-racism classes in all elementary schools. Black scholars will write the textbooks and curriculum adopted for these classes. Institute the Black History 365 curriculum. African history highlighting the civilizations of Mali, Ghana, Songhai, Egypt, Ethiopia, Nubia, Zimbabwe, and others are incorporated into all schools, world history, or social study curriculum. I have several problems with this, and I want to pull up something before we get into this and talk about that element. This is a process, a blog for American history. The Organization of American Historians puts this blog together. It is titled Beyond Harriet, African Americans, Women's Work in the Underground Railroad. And I wanted to pull this up because how do we go to Ghana and Mali and Songhai and Timbuktu when we have great American heroes here, right? What about Hiram Revels and Prince Rivers and Prince Hall and Harriet Tubman? I mean, we have some of the story, but not all of the story because they made a movie about her and watered the story down, right? What about
Elizabeth Freeman? That's
right. You know, Mumbet and several others are great African Americans here, the freedmen that were basically fought for their freedom. I mean, we can't let this moment get overshadowed by the star of celebrity. And this is why we felt that it was important to do this show, to add on with the rest of what those who are fighting in this space is talking about for our reparations. So I just want to read a little bit of this before we move on, right? Because I think this is important. Most histories or legends of the Underground Railroad emphasize the abolitionist efforts of white men. Rarely do they reference the efforts of women or blacks. This omission is partially because pioneering Underground Railroad scholars such as Wilbur H. Siebert relied chiefly on the recollections of white men. Their sentiments are reflected in the words of Levi Coffin, the white abolitionist Quaker who styled himself, quote, president of the Underground Railroad, end quote. Describing African-American participation in the Underground Railroad, Coffin derisively asserted there were a few careful managers, but only a few. The majority could not be trusted. They lacked shrewdness and caution and could sometimes be bribed to act as spies or betrayed the hiding places of the fugitives. Contrary to Coffin's claims, African-American women planned and executed the most dangerous elements of their escape. Deciding whom to trust required intelligence and astuteness on the part of these self-liberated women, for they were well aware that some people, white and black, men and women, worked as slave catchers. Moreover, everyone involved knew that white men posed some of the greatest threats to African-American women. This potential danger is suggested in the recollection of Nathan Cogshell, a Quaker in Grant County, Indiana, who expressed that, quote, as a young unmarried man, he had often shared a bed with a fugitive slave his family was sheltering, end quote. There is no evidence to show that Cogshall made sexual advances towards self-liberated women. I mean, I don't need to read the rest of that. I wanted to highlight the fact that we have, who are these women? What are their names? Why do I need to know, right? First, I'm not saying we don't need to know about Mali and West Africa and Songhai and Timbuktu, etc. I wouldn't dare say that. But I need to know who these women were that helped propel our freedom, that were instrumental in the Underground Railroad, because we know Harriet Tubman's great story, one of the greatest Americans to ever walk on this soil. But we don't know about the rest of these people. And why would we put emphasis on a history that many of us are disconnected from, to overlook this history that we are connected to? It makes absolutely no sense to me at all. Did any of you want to speak on that before we moved on?
Yes, absolutely. We want to speak on that. You hear me now? Understand that when you're building a case for Black America and the case is being built on what happened to Black Americans, not nothing that happened in Africa, it only makes sense and it's only right to do a historical reform basing the history on the heroes that propelled and moved the race forward and that freed the race. If you're not demanding to put into the education system the omission of all of the heroes in the Civil War, all the heroes in the Revolutionary War, all of the heroes who bled and died for this country building it. If you don't, how do you jump over to African heroes? I don't understand. This is disrespectful to me. I don't know what it feels like to nobody else, but this to me is disrespectful. And that's a major problem, because when you talk about doing political action and trying to build the back of your policy off the back of my ancestors, and then you want to jump all the way over their work and get all the way over to Africa and say, that's what I need to teach my children. No, you need to teach your children about there are countless heroes, not just the great Sister Harriet Tubman, who is, to me, the greatest woman in American history, right? There are so many that we just don't know because we never had a true deconfederatization of America. We never had a true education system that was devoid of white supremacy. So when we talking about addressing that, you can't say, all right, to fix that, we have to talk about African greatness. That's the Afrocentrism that has held us back for so long. We can't say, no, we got to start talking about Africa to be great. And jump over all of and to us, this is our family you're talking about ignoring. You're not going to ignore our familial greatness in this country. This is our grandparents, our aunts and uncles who have done this thing. We cannot do that. We are military heroes, literary heroes, academic heroes, poets, warriors, singers, musicians. Everything that made America great was with us, started with us. So don't jump to Africa. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you can't do that. That is disrespectful. And we just can't have that. But and the more important point to make is that we as a coalition of reparationists fighting to move and advance the fight for reparations forward have to understand that we have to be willing to not only dig, so Ice Cube presented this, we have to do two things. We have to say, if Ice Cube is going to step into this space, it's not enough to just say, you know what, he don't know enough, let's dismiss him. No, let's say Ice Cube, instead of that, let's demand him, you need to go public with this. I need a press conference. If you think you are in a space to where you can do something, make a contract with Black America, or even at least present one, you need to come out and speak to us. You can't just be doing this type of stuff in your living room or wherever you're doing this stuff at. You need to come out into the public. Talk to me. You need to invite the people you're trying to make the contract with and talk to them. You have not got enough feedback from people. You have not done enough in there. And I know this is COVID, right? And we can't have large groups and gatherings like that. But Ice Cube, you got to slow down, brother. This is really bad. And I don't understand if you know how bad this is, but this is really bad, brother. And you need to talk to your family. The people that made you great, you're going to lose all of that if you continue to move forward with this, bro. This is just not,
Yeah, I think one of the problems is not centering this around us. I think it's maybe a lack of awareness of what it means to be American descendants of slavery. Because like you have to, everything you do, you lose power of what you're talking about when you center it on other groups, or when you center it on some type of something in a faraway land that doesn't have to do with our particular story. I understand how, like, this coming from the different schools of thought, coming from like Pan-Africanism, where we want to lift up Africa, and we want to tell those stories, and those stories are good to be told. But they just don't belong in a document like this, because the claim we have is with America. So if you want to retell the stories, we need to tell the story of American heroes, like the brother said. Like, so for example, we talking about Reconstruction, NeoReconstruction. We don't need to take down a statue of Robert E. Lee and put one up of Mansa Musa or put one up of Shaka Zulu. You know, we don't need that type of tell American stories with American ADOS heroes. It's freedom fighters. That's kind of what we need to center this thing around on. And I think there's maybe a lack of understanding how to center that. Okay, we don't need you want to take down Jefferson Davis Highway and put up a Nelson Mandela Highway, or you want to put up name somebody, insert somebody.
I mean,
and then also, yes, it's a tone deafness, or maybe a lack of understanding the context of the history of, like my brother Ali says, we were kicked out of that. We were the ones that they kicked out. You know, they said, all right, hey, y'all can have these. We'll want some of your goods, some of your alcohol, some of your weapons. We want some of the trinkets. We want to exchange those goods for these people. You know, they kicked us out. So
what I say, Josh, I be telling people all the time, we're the descendants of the people who were kicked out of Africa. Keep it real.
I mean that's just what it is.
Our
You know,
ancestors were expelled.
that's right. Now I don't want to disrespect those that did freedom fight over there to fight against those that were enslaving, but you know, there's no way in the world millions and millions of us got over here, not just to America, but to the Caribbean, to South America, without some type of exchange or some type of complicitness involved in it. So when you want to skip over American heroes, ADOS heroes, to go and talk about and try to center education, re-education on telling that story, I don't have no problem with telling that story. You know, I have no problem telling the story, but we have to make sure that when you bring in this presentation for this contract, we have to be included before you start to talk about other groups. Just like, you know, we talk about Rome. I understand that we talk about Rome. We talk about Mesopotamia. We talk about the medieval Europe. We can talk about Africa. That's fine. But we have to center and put more attention on talking about us.
Facts. All right, let's get to this next part. And then I'm going to close my screen out from here. And then I'm going to end the live stream on Facebook, family. So make sure y'all come over to YouTube. I put the link in the live chat on Facebook. You know, it was so many things for us to touch on tonight that it was, you know, I had a plan that I was going to run through this and then my bros was going to come on. But it's hard to have to go through these points and everybody not touch on it, because when you're looking at it, it doesn't make no sense. And we're gonna prove that.
And we got to take our time. I don't like rushing. We have to take our time with this stuff, because this stuff is important. Like, this ain't no fast food YouTube TV show.
This ain't microwave scholarship.
This is that slow home cooking that your grandmama make for you. You got to wait, and it's gonna be good for you. Just be patient.
Off the bone.
You feel me?
All right, so massive bank. I'm hearing some feedback from some massive bank lending and finance reform. While capitalism is a good system, it requires capital to participate. This we agree, right? This is why we're fighting for reparations. But then this next sentence, it throws me for a complete loop, just like the Native American stuff. It says for decades, Black and Jewish people and neighborhoods considered hazardous were entirely or largely denied loans through the unscrupulous banking practice known as redlining. I'm gonna stop right there. Let me read that again. For decades, Black and Jewish people and neighborhoods considered hazardous. So we have more inclusion, right? We have Jewish people and we have neighborhoods, obviously not Black or not Jewish. That's pretty clear to see. Considered hazardous were entirely or largely denied loans through the unscrupulous banking practice known as redlining. If this is a contract for Black America, I don't understand, me personally, I do not understand how you bring Jewish people into, because they were made right in America. There are many Jewish billionaires in the United States of America, made by the United States of America. There are many more Jewish millionaires made by the United States of America. I believe we only have 5. And some of those millions are questionable, right? Because is it millions because it's asset, or is it millions because it's liquid? We don't know. But Brother Antonio Moore has done a good job of breaking down some of these so-called Black billionaires, showing that they're not necessarily worth $1 billion liquid. They're worth $1 billion just when you add their money plus assets, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that I want to get to is this Pew Research Center article about how income varies among U.S. religious groups, right? Because I don't understand why you have Jewish people in this document. It, again, is another point that doesn't make sense to me.
And Jewish people already got reparations. What are we talking about?
and they already got reparations. So anyway,
Israel is reparations, by the way. That's Israel.
Israel is reparations.
Reparations you can get in a whole nation, you know. And I'm not here saying they shouldn't have got it. Some people may say shouldn't. I'm not saying it on this show whether they should or shouldn't have. I'm just saying it is reparations.
Right, the whole nation. Okay. So we're looking at the percentage of each religious group with total family income of fill in the blank per year. So under $30,000 per year, Jews. I mean, you can look at this list, right? Because we're on this list as well. We're just all the way at the bottom where we always are in the United States of America, which is another reason why I do not understand why you add anybody else into a claim that's supposed to be for us, into this contract that you're trying to make. So 15% of people making $30,000 to $49,999,000, 24% of this is per year, and this is of the Jewish population, $50,000 to $99,999, 24%, $100,000 plus. The Jewish community is at 44%. They are at the top of this list. Household income of U.S. religious groups, right? So the rest of these groups are pretty much European dominated, right? And I went through just about all of them because I wanted to see where we fell into place at, and they also touch on that in the article. So we get to Muslim, right? And I'm Muslim. So, but we know that they're not talking about the black Muslims because the black Muslims are right. But the Muslim population is only
maybe they are. Maybe that's why it's lower. You know?
1.1%, and it could be a part of why it's lower, right? But the Muslim population is only 1.1% of the total population, right? So we look at them, 20% is in that $100,000 range. And we could probably safely deduce that it's not a lot of ADOS in that group. We are at the bottom. The National Baptist Convention and Jehovah's Witnesses, and I believe Church and God in Christ. Well, the National Baptist Convention is us, is ADOS, period, hands down. But look at how many, 9% in that blue range of $100,000 plus. So when we're talking about how you include Jewish people in your document, it's baffling to us. It's a document that doesn't make any sense. And like my brother Logic said, we need to have a conversation. When I look at Jehovah's Witnesses, look, they're 4%. Jehovah's Witnesses, in all of my life, every Jehovah's Witness church, or I don't know if they call them churches or temples, that I've ever seen were predominantly quote unquote black. I'm not saying that they all are, obviously they're not, right? But everyone that I've seen growing up, my grandmother that's living today is a Jehovah's Witness. So let's read from this article real quick. It says about 4 in 10 Jews, 44%, and roughly a third of Hindus, 36%, and Episcopalians, 35%, living, again, Episcopalians, that's another code word for white folk, live in households with incomes of at least $100,000. Again, these groups also have high levels of educational attainment. For instance, nearly half of Hindu adults and almost 1/3 of Jewish adults hold postgraduate degrees. Indeed, in addition to education, other factors such as age, race, and ethnicity are also correlated with both religion and income. Among those denominations with the lowest household income are 2 historically black churches. The National Baptist Convention, 9% live in households with incomes of at least $100,000, and the Church of God in Christ. So the 2 black churches are second and third to last on that list at 9%. Jehovah's Witnesses also have low household income, 4%. And all 3 of these groups, nearly half of all members have household incomes of less than $30,000 per year. Nearly half. Now let's go back up to where Jewish, only 16%. So it begs the question, why in the world would you have Jews in this document when they're already doing good in the United States of America. This is just confusing to me. I unshare my screen so I can finally see everything that's going on. So yeah, definitely. Y'all touch on that and then go in.
Yeah, you killed that. I don't got nothing to say about that.
Well, I believe part of the reason may have something to do with, and again, this is an updated document from the one he did before, I believe. And I want to say we have
All right, definitely. Brother Ali, you want to touch on that real quick?
Baby Josh in the building. I was just saying baby Josh in the building, but you know how that is. It's interesting, man. I put a clip in the inbox this morning. I don't know if you guys got to watch it. What's the lady's name? She was doing an interview with this brother, and the issue of
Jane Elliott.
Mm-hmm. And the issue of reparations came up,
mm-hmm.
and it took an interesting turn, like really quick. He starts talking about reparations, and she started talking about Native Americans and how we have to make Native Americans whole. We have to do right by them. So it's just really interesting how so many people want to put our issues at the bottom of everybody else's. Even Jane Elliott, somebody like Jane Elliott, who you wouldn't really expect that from, did the exact thing that we're talking about, even with this Ice Cube document, and so many other people tend to do it, whether it's with Jews, whether it's with the whole Black and Brown coalition, whether it's with, you know, our brothers and sisters from the African diaspora who want to be included in our justice claim. It just keeps happening, and I don't understand why everybody feels that they have to put our thing underneath everything else that they're trying to do. I don't get it, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, my bad. I just wanted my little man ran and he wanted to tell me good night, so excuse that interruption. I wanted to say, you know, it's interesting. This may have something to do with, and again, I would love to ask him the question. I would love for him to, you know, like Brother Logic said, come and speak directly to us, so we don't have to speculate about these things. Like if you were to come and present this contract, it will make things make a lot more sense. So we won't have to come and just criticize it. I know you and Brother Q invited you know, strong and sharp minds to come and add ideas. So we're adding ideas, but you know, we got to add some criticisms too. So I wish you would have some context as to why you added. Then we will be able to make more astute criticisms and suggestions. But some of this I will have to guess, and again, we can only speculate because we didn't get a firsthand explanation. May have to do with some of the hot water he was getting in with some anti-Semitic posts, posts that they are accusing him of anti-Semitism about. You know, I'm not going to get into how I feel about that statement, but I think to paint them as a disadvantaged group again, it's just problematic, especially when you consider like the fact that, you know, when you look at the amount of billionaires, I think in the top Forbes, or the top 100 on Forbes, I believe it's like 50% or something like that, or maybe like in the top 10 richest people in America, I think half of them are Jewish. Now that's not to promote the idea that, hey, all Jewish people are rich and all this kind of stuff. The point is, when you're trying to paint them as a disadvantaged group alongside us, or paint them alongside us as far as a justice claim for American systemic racism and slave ownership and all this type of stuff, oppression, it just doesn't add up. So it's almost like you're trying to just kind of save face from some of the hot water that you were catching. And I don't know. We can only speculate, but that's just what the idea that came to mind.
Definitely. Brother Logic, did you want to do your presentation now, bro?
Man, yeah, we can just like move into everything. Yo, check it out, right? We're gonna continue to roll through this Cube contract. You know, to me, it's really about the information. It's not so much about Q, because you know how we do at Be the Power, we break down information. You know what I'm saying? We don't try to break down people unless they really deserve it. We break down information. That's what we do. We go, y'all saw what we did with HR 40, and we're gonna come back to that. HR 40 still got to get some more work. HR 40 ain't over with, people. And I'm gonna come before this show is over with. I'm gonna speak to HR 40 again, and I'm gonna give some insight and some instruction on what needs to be done with HR 40. But while we're on this particular note, right, I think we beat that not immigrant, but that Native American thing, Indian thing up, and we should understand that. Like, I don't know what Cuba's doing with that, but we can move to another portion, right? They're calling a lot of what they're doing neo-reconstruction. And I don't think they understand what Reconstruction is about. So I'm gonna pull something up straight from the contract, and we gonna check it out. Right? So let's just check this thing out. Let me blow it up a little bit. So you got it pulled up, bro?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so let's look at this thing, right? So as you can see, straight off bat, that's our ancestors right there. That they trying to build their case for a new Reconstruction, that we've already talked about how they want to include people that ain't got nothing to do with these brothers right here. In fact, if what they did have to do with these brothers wasn't good. It was dealt with slavery and some more things, right? So it says we are proposing a Black agenda, a neo-reconstruction that would empower African Americans economically and educationally, as well as provide justice and equal protection under the law. Is that right? I mean, I haven't heard how. When you look at any document, you want to know the who, when, where, and how things are going to happen. They haven't talked much about the how. And we already talked about the problems with the who, right? The marketing. Now they're talking about marketing of a neo-reconstruction like it's some business plan, right? At the end of slavery, the Republican Party took the lead on attempting to fairly and justly integrate African Americans into American life. This was done through a government-led effort called Reconstruction, a period that lasted roughly from the passing of the Reconstruction Act of 1867 to the Compromise of 1877. During that decade of Reconstruction, African Americans were enfranchised, largely given voting and civil rights. Nearly 2,000 African Americans were elected to public office, and Black representation in, the way Cube has this thing set up is hard to really navigate. You kind of, and even the website that he gives you to look at this thing from is hard to navigate. It don't even really work really well. That's another thing. Because if you want people to look at this thing, it got to work well. Right? In the South, right? So South Carolina state legislature was a robust 59%. In 1867, Republican presidential candidate Rutherford B. Hayes reached a compromise with the Democratic Party that ceded control of the South to the Democrats, right? He conceded. He capitulated, ending Reconstruction and eventually leading to the institution of Jim Crow era that placed African Americans in the form of de facto slavery for approximately the next 100 years. Had Reconstruction continued, the African American condition and race relations in America would be far beyond what they are today. Recognizing the unfortunately lost opportunity, we proposed neo-reconstruction, an aggressive initiative that has the purpose of redressing past wrongs and revitalizing the Black community economically. I'm not reading no more of that. I'm about to get into that. I don't need to read no more of that. So first and foremost, right, if you're going to talk about doing if you're gonna talk about doing a reconstruction, right? A neo-reconstruction. You got to talk about what really happened. You can't glaze over that history. You got to talk about what happened in Reconstruction, and you got to be really detailed and specific with that thing. You can't just say it was a lot. They chalked up Reconstruction to a lost opportunity. That's horrible. That's horrible. That let me know right there, these people right here don't know what they're doing. And if they do know what they're doing, they're criminals. You understand? So whoever put this thing together, I have real problems with you. Because I know Cube ain't write this thing. He ain't write this. Whoever wrote this.
And remember, that's the addendum part of the document. That you had this part that I was reading from. And
no, this ain't the addendum.
Okay. I thought that was
a little later. But this part, right, they trying to frame their case for what they're calling neo-reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
Not a real reconstruction. Let me tell you something. First of all, let's go into Reconstruction. I have to talk about what happened in Reconstruction and why. They talked about the 2,000 legislators that was elected. Didn't say what happened to them, though. You can't talk about Reconstruction and then mention that, we was doing good, and then all of a sudden it was an opportunity that was missed. No. You can't talk about Reconstruction without talking about the domestic terrorism. You can't talk about Reconstruction without talking about Andrew Johnson and how Reconstruction was not a failure or a missed opportunity.
Froze, bro.
You cut out, bro.
Jump in, one of y'all, real quick until you come back on.
Well, I agree with what he's saying. I think that it needs to go a little bit deeper into the original Reconstruction effort, and just to kind of build the case and lay it out so people who don't know Reconstruction history can learn something about it. But go ahead, finish your point.
Yeah, it's storming here. Be patient with me. We got storms in Savannah, Georgia right now. So, but what I'm saying is you cannot go over Reconstruction and talk about doing another one without really speaking about what happened in Reconstruction. So Reconstruction was not a failure or a missed opportunity. Reconstruction was overthrown. You understand? It was a criminal operation. The chief criminal in this act was operating the highest executive office in the country. Andrew, you can't talk about Reconstruction without talking about Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson was the chief criminal in a criminal operation that overthrew Reconstruction. 6 weeks after Andrew Johnson was sworn in as the vice president, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. And then look, let me read. Let's go back in the time. We read this in a previous show, but we got a lot of new subscribers and a lot of new followers. So I want to read this again. A lot of y'all may not have heard about this, right? So this is from a judge back in that time, right? He was on the Plessy versus Ferguson case. He's known for inventing this thing called colorblind justice. His name is Albion Tourget, Judge Albion Tourget, right? He said, in all, this is what he had to say about the Civil War. He said, in all except the actual results of the physical struggle, I consider the South to have been the real victors in the war. I am filled with admiration and amazement at the masterly way in which they have brought about these results. The way in which they have neutralized the results of the war and reversed the verdict of Appomattox is the grandest thing in American politics. The grandest thing in American politics. Amazement because such an outcome was not inevitable or foreordained. Because in the end, Reconstruction did not fail, but was overthrown with impunity and audacity in one of the bloodiest, darkest, and still least known chapters of American history. Why was it so bloody? Why was it so dark? They didn't speak to none of that, right? Because when we talked about those 2,000 legislators, those freedmen, our ancestors, our family, he didn't speak about the assassinations that took place, how these people were ran out of office, right? These people were gunned down by red shirts and rifleman clubs and the Ku Klux Klan. Domestic terrorism is what we had, right? He didn't talk about that. They said it was that's not a missed opportunity. We seized the opportunity. It wasn't. How was it a missed opportunity when you saw 2,000 people get voted in office? We answered the call. The opportunity didn't miss us. What happened was domestic terrorism visited our doorstep. We were murdered. We were killed. When you kill a public servant and an elected official, that's an assassination. How are you not going to talk about the assassinations that took place on our senators and our legislators? This doesn't make any sense for you to try to build a case on our ancestors' pain and suffering, and then try to integrate all these other people into the fruit of their labor. That's not justice. And grift is too small of a word for it. This is the crime. This is the crime. This is larceny. You understand? This is larceny, and this is very, very devious and nefarious acts by culprits. I'm not just gonna call. I gotta call it like I see it now. I can't tip through the tulips with this. You're gonna say this is neo-construction, and you didn't even talk about what really happened in the real construction, how Andrew Johnson was operating. This is why he was operating as the president. He did the nefarious acts of putting the governors who were ex-Confederates and ex-rebels and ex-treasonous individuals back in the office. Mm-hmm. He did all of this while Congress was at recess for 9 months, right? And everyone knowing he's moved like a slithering snake and put all these people back in the office. And then when Congress came back, they're like, what in the world is going on? Andrew Johnson is a criminal, and he used public office to commit crimes against humanity. You understand? And then what he did was he ushered in an era where we moved from private bondage into public subjugation, to where we went from the property of one white family or one white man to the property and slaves of all white people in all white society. If it wasn't for Andrew Johnson, Reconstruction wouldn't have been overthrown. You got to understand that. So you can't talk about a missed opportunity. You be talking about a president who orchestrated a criminal operation and executed criminal acts across the nation with co-conspirators and put them into public office. You don't know how bad this thing is. And for them to just breeze over it as a missed opportunity is very offensive to me, right? So that's when I got to this part, that's when I just lost my top, because I'm real serious about this thing. As a reparationist, this is in my blood. As a reparationist, you got to understand what kind of skin you got in the game. You got to understand what you really anchored into. This fight ain't just a fight of words. There's blood already been shed about this fight. And this blood that's been shed is our family members' blood. You have to start looking at what we're doing as a fight for our family. This ain't just some type of stuff that me and these brothers, we don't just come on here on Tuesdays and Thursdays because we don't got nothing to do. This is serious business. we all got families and jobs and all kind of stuff we got to do. But this is serious business. So we have to pull this contract with Black America. Because when you talk about Black America, you're talking about me, you're talking about Ali, you're talking about Josh, you're talking about Naheem, you're talking about every one of you in the chat. So we have to chime in. You said you wanted input and you wanted advice. We got to chime in, Q. Now, where you at? You got to come on out and from wherever you at, and you got to talk to us. If you want to talk about that perch, Black America, you got to come talk to us. You got to come see us, because this ain't cool. And that's just one of the aspects. When they go to talking about lost wages and what it should be paid for, the real problem I have with this contract is everything that they're anchoring it to is very specific to a very specific people. But then when they talk about what they're going to do to heal and redress all of this stuff. They're talking about bringing all these other people to the party. What they call them, say we inviting them to the picnic, or they invited to the barbecue, and all this other silly foolishness. This has to stop. We see this type of stuff in a lot of different things, don't we? We see this type of stuff in Cobra. We see this type of stuff with HR 40. We see this type of stuff in these city plans for reparations. I call them silly plans for reparations. So we see these things happening all over the country. The reparationists have to stand up and get involved. We have to get out. Like, we love coming on YouTube, but you have to get off of social media and get in the streets. You have to call your congressmen and your legislatures and get in their ear and call them. You got to troll them. Don't just do all your trolling on Facebook and on Twitter. Do some trolling on the phone. Get on the phone and call your senator. Call his legislative assistant. Tell these people we not having it. You understand? So I'm gonna pass it because I know the other brothers got some things to put out, and I'm gonna put some more stuff out later. But we can't be playing no games about this. We reparations.
Yeah, I wanted to just add something real quick, y'all. It's funny you mentioned Andrew Johnson, and people think about, a lot of times these days you want to say Trump is the worst president. Trump is a terrible president. He'll go down as one of the worst, but by far Andrew Johnson is the worst president. He was the first president to be impeached. He was. If we got to understand, if it wasn't for Andrew Johnson getting rid of Field Order 15, that would have changed this whole thing. That's reparations interrupted. So my conversation when I'm trying to, we've been fighting a lot of white supremacists and a lot of these just hateful and ignorant white supremacists. I just gotta say, they're just devils. They're just devils. I don't know any other word that would describe how terrible and vile these people are that we're facing online on a daily basis. But like, I let them know that, look, reparations is a debt owed. It's not no handout, okay? And it was something that was interrupted. It was already implemented. It was interrupted by the traitor Andrew Johnson. It's interesting, how funny the ADOS history is. I might have shared this before, but my sister told me through the Ancestry site, she found a document that was a pardon letter from Andrew Johnson to one of my slave master Confederate former Confederate officers, I believe. Or he wasn't even an officer in the Confederate Army. He did business for the Confederacy. He ran some type of lucrative business on the side of the war. So after the war, he was a criminal. He was a traitor. And he wrote a letter to get a pardon from President Andrew Johnson. No problem. He got it. It didn't take him very long. So I'm like, yo, that's crazy. I mean, I just thought that was an interesting tidbit of history. So when we talk about this, ain't no abstract. This is direct. We can tell direct family stories dealing with this stuff.
That's right, Brother Ali. You wanted to add in?
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk about some of the stuff that I thought was kind of like, some of the good ideas in the plan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I want to talk.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good in the plan. There's a lot of good ideas, a lot of helpful ideas. You're right. Those deserve to be highlighted.
All right. So
let's talk about it.
All right. Let's see. Let me see if I can share this.
And don't get me wrong. A lot of those things in there are good things to do. It's just the way it's been constructed, it was in a very bad way.
And then the name contract, like I said earlier, framing is everything at the end of the day. And your terms and conditions. My condition is we just go with the blueprint that Professor Sandy Darity lays out in the book, From Here to Equality. If you're a first-time listener, we urge everybody to get that book and read it. I've had so many people hit me up and let me know that they're reading that book right now. That's the book, right? Get into that book, and it's gonna help you formulate your whatever it is you're trying to push. And instead of trying to just do something extra and use your star power, you can push that, and we can all push that together. Period.
Yeah, I mean, he really answers a lot of questions and closes a lot of holes with that book. You know, it's a masterpiece. Masterpiece. So,
What did you say, bro? The reparation is Quran.
That's right.
right. So this is part of the new or neo-reconstruction, the neo-reconstruction section of his contract. The first piece is talking about a mandate that the descendants of African American veterans of World War II who were unable to capitalize on the opportunities afforded by the GI Bill of 1944 through 56 should receive the NPV of those benefits, today calculated at a 5% interest rate. I think it's I think that that's a good idea. I don't know about the 5% interest rate, where they're getting that from exactly, but I think it's a good idea for the descendants of those veterans to be able to, in some kind of way, maybe get some benefit out of what their ancestors were locked out of with that particular bill, coming home after fighting that war. You know, again, it's interesting because our people have fought in every single war that this country has been in, every single war, and the way that our people, the position that we serve in these wars, particularly even World War II, when you think about like Tuskegee Airmen and so forth, you know, these people actually save this country. You go back to but not the American Revolution, but you go back to the Civil War. If it weren't for the so-called Negro soldiers, man, the Union loses that war. Same thing with World War II, man. There's so many instances where our people actually save, you know, this country from destruction. So at the end of the day, I do think that this particular section is not a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea for the descendants to maybe some kind of way, if we can figure out how to do it, you can figure out how to do it, because it's just an idea right there, but you have to figure out how to do it and how to fund it, right? And I think Darry, if there is a way to fund it, Professor Darry would know how to do it. Yeah. So I think that was a cool idea. I don't think it's a bad idea. Let me know if anybody in the chat thinks it's not a good idea, but I thought it was cool. He's talking about he wants funds for asset build, like grants for home ownership, education, business startups, vouchers to purchase financial assets. I guess he's talking about like paper assets and things, along with a governing body to establish rules and protections for proper allocation of capital for long-term development. I don't think that's a bad idea. I've seen stuff like that in other places and other people's Black agendas and things. So that's not really all that far off base from what other people were actually saying. Let me see. Mandate that all American corporations that benefited financially from slavery start management trainee programs for African American college graduates, with the goal being to increase the number of Blacks in management executive positions to one of equality with the Black population, 13%, within a given number of years, and donate a federally mandated percentage of their profits to Black-owned businesses over a predetermined period of time. I think that's, again, I wouldn't say necessarily a jack move, but I think the concept of, you know, us representing in these organizations, or with in terms of access to loans based on our population, the numbers should match up. So I think, again, that's something that they probably got from other places, because that's not far off from other things we've seen either. So if you get this particular document and you want to read the recommended tactics for restitution, and understand that restitution is actually a synonym for the word reparation. The synonyms, same thing.
They ran from that word for whatever reason.
I don't know why, but it's the same thing. So on this particular page, there seems to be a couple of things that's not so bad. You know, mandate corporations to increase the number of blacks in management executive positions to one close to equality with the black population. I don't know why he has that on there twice, but that's on there 2 times. I don't know if they know that. Mandate that corporations through tax incentives or law to spend a percentage of their profits with black-owned businesses over a predetermined period of time. I think that's in there a couple of times too. They need to fix that because there are certain things that are being repeated. That's another problem with this document that I've seen. But go ahead. What was you going to say?
Well, I would say based off what I've read the document once in its entirety, and then I skimmed through it a couple times. What I would say is, I'm a reparationist, and I'm a politician. I don't play no game. This is Mr. Potato Head politics. They're putting the arms where the legs should go, and it doesn't make any sense when it's constructed this way. It's not that the arm isn't a good thing to have, but you can't put it where the legs should go.
That's right.
It's not that the legs are bad, but they where the arms are supposed to be. So we have to get this thing under control. And either you're doing it wrong intentionally or out of ignorance. Either way, we can't have it. Because I don't play when it comes to politics. Politics is the science of who gets what, when, where, and how. That's the and government is the game, and politics is how it's played. And I don't have time to let this type of stuff slip through the cracks unaddressed. We can't do that. Yes, there's some good things in here. There's some very good things in here, but they have to be put together right.
Yeah,
they have to be put together right, and you have to talk about how it's going to get done. We have to be policy oriented. We have to come and mature out of the position where we're just saying we need this to happen and we need that to happen. No, we need to be mature enough, educated enough, politically mature enough, specifically to say these are the policies that we have constructed, and these are the policies we need people to sponsor. We need writing original legislation. You can write legislation. You don't have to have Cory Booker and Senator Shealy Jackson and all of the other congressmen and congresswomen writing all the legislation. Don't you know that you as a citizen can produce your own legislation? Come on now. You as a citizen can produce and write your own bill. You can present it and say, here, this is what the people have put together. This is what the people want. Because ain't that what they supposed to be doing in the first place, representing the people? That's what you can do. We need to get into a place where we're producing policy, grassroots policy, straight from the grassroots. You understand? And now what we're trying to do is get these policies introduced. I'm policy oriented. I don't need no contract for Black America. I need a policy for American descendants of slavery. I need a policy that's going to be championed by a reparationist Congress. We're not talking about pipe dreams. We're talking about policies. And we're talking about, and guess what? We as the people, aware, politically mature of what our power is, we can understand there's a political consequence we can offer those who don't get with our program. You understand? We can tell you, listen, if you don't get with the program, you're going to be sitting at home with us. You understand? We'll put a reparationist in office. You know what I mean? So if you're not we have to create a reparationist Congress, people. Congress is where the laws are written. And we can be less concerned with this contract with Black America and more focused with a Congress who can produce some legislation for Black America. You understand? And if these things are good, and if you want them, these things can be constructed into some sort of policies. Some of these things are not federally, they don't have a place in the federal government. Some of them have to be placed in the federal government. But some of these things are local initiatives that could be done and organized around that. Some of the things in this contract are state initiatives that can be organized and put some effort into that. And some of these things have to be done federally. You have to know where things go, or you'll be looking like Mr. Potato Head.
So now you brought up something about a reparationist government, right? Mm-hmm. This is something we've been talking about too. I don't know if y'all want to go there yet, but all 435 seats in the United States House of Representatives, 35 of the 100 seats in the United States Senate will be up for election November 3rd, 2020. November 3rd, 2020.
Okay, let's talk about it.
So when we're talking about we need a reparationist Congress, we need to pay attention to the fact that not only the presidential election is happening on November 3rd, but we're talking about every seat in the House and 35 of the seats in the Senate. We need to flip the Senate. Nobody's talking about that. I haven't heard any other than us. You know, I haven't heard anybody talking about flipping the Senate. I've had we would talk to people like Avis online and other people, and we would talk about that. Well, they were talking about Donald Trump and fear mongering and finger pointing and finger wagging at people for saying that they didn't want to vote for Joe Biden, Jim Crow Joe, right? These people were talking about, well, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you're going to vote for Trump. And they're trying to tell us that our black agenda needs to be put to the side because this presidential election is too important to blow based on some black agenda because this man is just too dangerous. Not even thinking in terms of the power of Congress, the power of the Senate. When Barack, and I know we talked about this before, when Barack Obama was president, Republican obstructionism is the reason he couldn't put over 100 federal judges in seats. He couldn't make those appointments because of the Senate obstructing him from doing it. The last person that he was trying to put on the Supreme Court, he couldn't get it done because of the Republican Senate. So at the same time, if we don't flip that Senate and if they lose control of the House, I don't know how much in danger they are of losing control of the House, but if they do, and it goes Republican, I don't know where any of us will be talking about because we could put Joe Biden in office, but if you get a Republican Congress, you can forget it. You can forget it. None of that means anything.
Facts. That's what I'm like. Understand that what Ali said is so serious because without Congress, like the Congress can fight the president in a way the president can't really fight Congress, right? Congress with the House and the Senate can do so many things to kind of get in the president's way. Our focus has to be congressional. Reparations is an invoice that has to be submitted to the United States Congress. It has to be because only Congress can direct the Fed to fund programs, right? That's where the budget's created. That's where funds are allocated. All of that stuff happens in Congress. And we as an electorate, I'm talking about the American descendants of slavery. I'm talking about Native Black Americans. I'm talking about Black folks in general. We as an electorate have been too focused on just the presidency. And if we don't get the president that we want, we just check out. Oh, I'm done. I ain't get the president I want. And then even when we do get the president we want, we just check out. That's what we did. We won. We got the president we want. But we do not focus on Congress. Congress, both the House and the Senate, has the lowest approval rating and the highest reelection rate. How is all you're doing is going and say, well, who's president? Let me vote for the president. And then you don't even care about the senators and the Congress people and the House representatives and all of that. You have to be over focused on Congress. You understand? Because policy is what we're after. The president ain't writing no laws. He ain't in the Senate chamber writing laws and that's not what he does. There's a whole lot of things that the president can do as an administration. There's a lot of executive functions that the president can do. But what we're talking about with this pure reparations program for American descendants of slavery, this is a congressional act. And if we don't have a congressional focus, we ain't gonna get no reparations. So you have to understand that.
So what you're saying is the reparationist culture needs to be a congressional culture. Like we need to change this thing around to where we only focus on the president. No, we need to change that to focus on the Congress because as a reparationist, we got to understand that it's going to take a congressional vote to get a reparations bill passed.
That's why I put this comment up on the screen because I think that is apt for the moment in what we're speaking about right now, as it should be logic, this is supposed to be a democracy, not a monarchy. And they keep trying to shift our focus to the king, right? It's always about the general election. It's always about the president. It's always about the pageantry behind the presidential election. So to be a reparationist, as my brothers were just saying so eloquently, we have to flip the Senate and we have to flip the House. And in this sense that in the same way you had progressives, right? These people that follow the Young Turks, and they built their platform and they had candidates come in and out of out of their platforms. We have to have our candidates who are reparations coming in and out of our platforms in the same exact way that they set a blueprint. They set a blueprint, and their specificity is basically the inclusive liberal thing. Our specificity is based upon reparations, and the more reparationists we get, particularly in the Congress. Of course, we would love to have them in the Senate, but particularly in the Congress, the better our chances are. And so one of the things that we're going to start doing on Be the Power is we're going to start interviewing our politicians that's running for office that are pushing reparations. We're going to have one on next week. I'm going to make that announcement. I don't want to put it out there right now, and I'll make the announcement as we get closer to that day. And this is how Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian started to build their push to have progressive candidates that were on a specific message that they wanted pushed, right? And now we see Rashida Tlaib, we see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, we see the squad, as they're called, right? The squad leads the progressives in the House. And we have to have reparationists in the same exact way. So definitely excellent points. Brother Josh, I know you wanted to get into a presentation breaking down the whole money aspect of what was presented in Cube's plan, or whoever wrote that for Cube. So if you're ready to bring that up.
Yeah, let me just share my screen. Hold on a second, y'all. So I'm just going to go into it. This is, let me know if y'all can see this, if I need to blow it up a little bit.
Yeah, you can blow it up. It's crazy when you blow it up and you try to put your mouse on the screen, it moves the whole document. At least it was doing that on mine.
Yeah, it's funny.
Like it was doing that on Brother Logic's as well.
So this is the economic part. It says, through the institution of racist enforcement of laws and policies such as the Homestead Act of 1862, the Social Security Act of 1935, the GI Bill of 1944, and the Federal Housing Administration loans, and its related redlining of the 1930s through the 1960s, white Americans were granted advantages and opportunities that African Americans were not. All but 2% of the 120 billion of government-backed mortgage loans that were awarded were given to whites. This reality undeniably helped create the incredible wealth gap between blacks and whites today. According to the Federal Reserve, the median white household, 171,000, has nearly 10 times more wealth than the median black household. Now, we got to break that down. Because it's important to about the median household wealth, but Brother Antonio Moore, he did a good job. He actually kept repeating this to the point where we all know that once you take out depreciating assets like your house and your TV and stuff like that, not your house, your car and your TV and stuff like that, you actually get a figure that's closer to about $1,700. Whereas if you take that same amount out of white Americans' wealth, it doesn't come, the 171 doesn't come down. So actually the wealth gap, even at the median, once you take that out, looks more like 100 times the amount as opposed to 10 times the amount. So I thought that was very important to highlight. Another thing that I wanted to highlight was I'm going to finish this. I wanted to come back to this. I want to finish this, but let me skip over to one thing, because let's be honest. When you talk about economics, one thing that I thought was not, I mean, it was just kind of disturbing, or I just don't understand why he's doing this, trying to run away from the word reparations, maybe using restitution. But even when he used restitution in this document, it doesn't really say how, it doesn't talk about cash payments. Can y'all comment to see if you see where it says cash payments? I didn't see cash payments in here. It's talking about different ways to pay it out. But let me skip over to this right here, because this is the difference between calculating. Excuse me, man, this thing is annoying. Doing things from the median versus the mean. Notice we use median wealth. We use median wealth all the time. But let me read what Dr. Darity put in this this recent release of the Roosevelt Institute. I'm gonna blow it up just a little bit so y'all can read it. Where is it? It is here. Yeah, calculating what is owed, prioritizing the mean of the racial wealth gap. So it says, to eliminate the racial wealth gap in its entirety, it's essential that the mean gap be erased. Although the usual discussion of wealth gaps focuses on median differences between the median captures and although the usual discussion of wealth gaps focuses on median differences because the median captures the typical condition for American households, targeting the median will leave the racial wealth gap largely untouched. The fact that 97% of white wealth is held by households with a net worth above the white median, 171,000, makes any policy that seeks to close the racial wealth gap at the median a policy that discounts overwhelmingly the largest proportion of racial wealth inequality. Indeed, the magnitude of a black-white wealth gap that requires erasure should not be constrained by the fact that there is a highly unequal distribution of wealth among white Americans. In fact, there's a similarly highly unequal distribution among the wealth of black people over a disproportionately far smaller total. So we already see, like, I don't have the chart in front of me, but we've seen it a million times, the chart where, it shows that 75% of the wealth of Black America is highlighted. I mean, is held by the top 10% of the group. And the bottom 50% combined is worth negative 120, 150 billion dollars. And so that just goes to show you that, like, this is a wealthless group, and the vast majority of the group is hurting. But there is a very wide gap between the top and the bottom. It's an unequal distribution of wealth amongst Black Americans. But if you look at white wealth, when we look at their total 100 trillion, yes, I want to say 75 trillion is in like their top 10% or something like that. But the bottom still has 25 trillion that they split. So like that is a way bigger amount. So that's when we're talking about, we break it down into deciles to show the unequal distribution. So let me keep reading. Eliminating the black-white pre-tax wealth differential should be a core objective of redress component of a plan for reparations. We estimate this will require the allocation between 10 and 12 trillion in 2016 dollars to eligible Black Americans. It says, ultimately, a well-designed reparations program could have a powerful impact, producing greater wealth equality among Black Americans. Consider the median to mean ratio. Suppose all Black households received an additional $800,000 to make up for the mean deficit. As of 2016, the Black median to mean ratio was 17,000 to 138,000. In other words, if you look at what our median wealth was 17,000, the mean wealth is 138, or approximately 13%. If the Black mean rises to the same level as the white mean through the provision of additional 800,000 to each Black household. Now let's say that again. What would an extra 800,000 do for the Black household? It says the intra-group Black median to mean ratio would change dramatically to 817,600 to 938,000, or approximately 87%. Eliminating the black-white pre-tax wealth differential should become a core objective of the redress component of a plan for reparations. And we estimate that this will require an allocation between 10 and 12 trillion to eligible Black Americans. That allocation should serve as the baseline or as a minimum. And we don't want to make our minimums the maximum for Black reparations. That was my ad, by the way, for Black reparations in the 21st century. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to go back to this Ice Cube contract thing.
And while you're pulling that up, I want to say what Josh is reading here is very important, because you know, when you're talking about closing the wealth gap, if you're approaching it from one point, and that's the middle and not the top, basically, then you still are left with a wealth gap. There's still going to be a gap there. So it doesn't make any sense at all. So, and that's an excellent breakdown, John. You were pulling up the screen back from.
Yeah, I want to just highlight what we're saying. So if somebody, a particular economist or whoever, is saying we should close the racial wealth gap at the median, understand what that does. If we understand, I believe it's like 94% of white wealth is held above the median. So you're really only accounting for 6% of white wealth. 6% of white wealth that we're accounting for, when we know we need to close the percentages higher than. Look what the median white wealth, we already said, was 171,000. So if we want to get the median Black wealth to 171,000, what sense does that make? No, we want to get the median Black wealth at 817,000. That's what makes some sense to me. You know,
Exactly.
Household. So if you understand, like, what would be the problem with that?
Understand this, right? Here's the problem with talking about that, right? The problem is people don't understand what a reparations program is. And they think that it's just, like we talked in the last couple shows, they just think about these checks that are going to be sent to people's bank accounts and in their mailboxes, and they're just going to get $800,000 cash. Understand that when we're talking about closing a wealth gap, we have to talk about closing it where it exists in all levels. Where you can't close a wealth gap with just cash payments. It has to be direct payments to individuals, payments that come in multiple forms, and far as wealth equity, wealth building tools, and different things of that nature, to make us a generationally economically strong people that can be passed down. If you give a man a whole bunch of money, that's not wealth. So we can't just, and a lot of people want to have the reparations conversation as some cash-based discussion. Reparations has to have liquid involved, but liquid is only one aspect of wealth. So we can't just focus on one aspect of the wealth. We want the total package. We want the full Monty. I want the liquid asset. I want the hard asset. I want the passive income. I want it all. You understand? Because we deserve it all. So I don't want to sell myself short in any kind of way. This is a comprehensive program. And like I said earlier in the show, a reparations program can be put together lousy and it'll have a lousy effect, or it can be put together perfectly and it can have the desired effect that we all need.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't understand was, why biblical references here. That's cool, but I just didn't think it would belong here. So that's the small nitpicking. I don't know if y'all wanted to say something about that. I just didn't. It just kind of seemed out of place here. Like, we're talking about economics, and I would think it would be some type of like economic quote or study here, data. But we get a Bible quote. It's cool. It's cool when you talk about the morality, but the morality, I think is a different conversation than the economics. But go ahead. My bad, Ali.
maybe they saw us talking about the biblical case for reparations, man.
Yeah, or maybe you just saw numbers right here and said, "Let me put that in."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, what show was that, by the way, Ali? What show was that?
I don't remember.
All right. So, who should receive restitution? I think it was highlighted in the beginning of the document, or somewhere. I saw it somewhere in the document, but like when you say who should receive it, of course, the 40 million living descendants, but I believe it needs to be reiterated when you say who should receive it, the qualifications that you propose, and of course we say the qualifications should be and this is the qualifications that was introduced to the record of the meeting at the last HR 40 hearing that Dr. Derry submitted. I was there when it was read into the meeting. And it was talking about, and this is also on the ADOS101.com roadmap to reparations site. It's talking about how you have to be able to prove one ancestor that was a slave, and then you have to have identified as Black, African American, Negro, or whatever on legal government documents, at least I believe it's 12 years prior to the passage of a reparations bill or the passage of a reparations study. And if you're biracial, you need to have one grandparent at least that meets both qualifications. That needs to be under right here where it says who should receive restitution. Another thing is, he's using all of these as a way of calculating these different atrocities. I don't understand why we want to focus on. Let me just read here. Our goal is to propose economic strategies and processes to address the concerns of the 40 million living descendants of American slavery. Okay, cool. I'm with that. As a group, they range between 3 to 5 generations away from this legalized economic atrocity. True. I did just want to bring this up real quick, just for all those, in case you got some racists watching to say, there are no living descendants. There's nobody who's slave that's still living from the. Look, this dude's father, he's still alive. His father was a slave. His father, he's 88. His father was born. His father had him when he was 70, and his father was born when slavery was still happening. So. It's not that long ago when somebody can say, yeah, my dad was a slave. Okay, so let me go back to this. Now it says, as a group, they range between 3 to 5 generations away from legalized economic atrocity and are current victims of post-civil rights discrimination. So yeah, that's cool. Now, when we talk about calculation metrics, this is the point I think we need to, man, this thing is. Also, fix this clicking and dragging stuff, man. Fix that on this website if you can, please. So it says I'm not gonna read all this, but he has different ways to calculate compensation for lost wages, compensation for market value of slavery, Freedmen's Bank, the Seneca Stone ring scandal, and he calculates and he gets down here. I understand it. There's a lot of different calculations, especially if you want to talk about compensation for lost wages. There's an economist by the name of a guy who did a study by the name of Thomas Kramer. He also wrote in Dr. Darry's book. Well, he didn't write it. He was cited in Dr. Darry's book. I'm gonna just read here. It says Thomas Kramer has generated a provocative set of estimates of the slavery bill for Black reparations by multiplying the prevailing average market wage by the number of hours worked by those enslaved over the interval of 1776 to 1865. Understand, that's just another thing we need change with the HR 40 bill, not to be talking about 1619. We want to talk about America. Kramer assumes that each full 24-hour day was stolen from the enslaved. Using a 3% interest rate by 2015, he estimates that the present value of U.S. chattel labor reaches $14.2 trillion. Using Kramer's interest rate, the 2019 present value amounts to $15.7 trillion. At each of the 3 interest rates we use, the current values of 16.4 trillion, 17 and 17.7 trillion, respectively. So I'm not trying to nitpick here, but that's just, if you're going to use lost wages, you got to lose not just lost wages. You got to use a 24-hour day, because you were enslaved. That means they held you in bondage even when you weren't at work. So if they got you in bondage, you need to be clocked in on all that too. But we can not stop there. We can go all the way to like a huge amount of money, hundreds of trillions or even more. I'm sure some of y'all seen the quadrillion category, and that has validity when you're talking about damages to people's humanity, to generations, to people's DNA, to where like now we're born and we're more at risk for chronic disease and deadly disease based on years of oppression and horrid conditions. That has validity. However, for the purposes of fixing the most tangible and the most easy to identify aspect of the legacy of this type of institution, we're not saying to make a calculation based on lost wages and the value of a slave. We use that to basically say, look, this is all the damages, but what we're saying is at a minimum, we need to focus on closing the racial wealth gap. So that's one criticism I would say within all of this. All this is good, but it needs to talk about, we need to close that racial wealth gap, and that's what it needs to be about. That's what it needs to be. You mentioned the racial wealth gap, but we need to talk about this program needs to close that gap, and it needs to close it at the mean. That's really the main point I wanted to get across. So let me end the share here.
But what's crazy? I wondered. I don't even know if this is supposed to be a reparations plan, because it doesn't really read like that. It feels more like something you would read on some candidate's website that's running for office or something. The way that it's put together is like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to try to do this, we're going to do this. You know what I mean? Then he threw some stuff about reparations in there, but he twisted it and made it about restitution and trying to avoid it. And he threw some stuff about Indians and Jews. And you know what I mean? It kind of reads like that. It looks like something you would find on Joe Biden's website or something. That's where the whole thing read to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not serious. I didn't think that it was serious at all reading through it. He said he brought on some experts and basically made some edits to the original, and Brother Antonio Moore went in on that original document. And maybe he's seen the video. I don't know, but it didn't do it any more justice. I didn't see the original, because if you look at what's going on with the stars, the rappers, they're trying to get involved. And the way I'm looking at it is that it's brand building. It's just a way to further their brand. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Ice Cube, but it appears that way with T.I. And I could be wrong. To be honest with you, I hope that I'm wrong. But to me, it just seems like it's a way to further their brand and keep their name relevant in the larger scheme of things. Because like Dave Chappelle said during his stand-up, he's like, nobody doesn't want to hear from me. But I came to this conclusion after we got off with Chubb Rock, and I'm glad my brother Logic was saying what he was saying earlier, because we've seen a lot of people commenting like, Chubb need to shut up and he doesn't get to speak for us, yada yada yada. That still doesn't negate the fact that we need to have the conversations, right? We still need to have the conversations. And after we got finished with that discussion, I did some deep reflection, and I thought about Malcolm's comment that he made, his statement where he said that Negroes are the only people that have comedians as their leaders, right? And I had to, and that's a true statement back in those days to some extent, but I had to reassess that. And this is my opinion. I'm not saying this is the opinion of my brothers. This is just something that I was zoning about. But I said, yeah, because at the end of the day, these were amplified voices in places that we couldn't get into, right? You would see comedians in the 60s and the 70s playing gigs, and it would be like almost all whites. in that place, right? And we've seen that with a lot of the musicians as well. So their voices did become an amplifier, a megaphone for some of our issues. Look at Muhammad Ali. You know, he spoke for our issues, and he was a boxer and he was an entertainer. Yeah, of course, we would have liked these men, particularly, to have had a political education. But in this day and time, yeah, we would like for a T.I. or an Ice Cube or any of these entertainers and celebrities to have a political education before they speak and before they jump out. Some of them are not willing to be, you know, educated, right? And that's why I thought that conversation with Chubb Rock was so great, because it started out one way, but then at the end, it ended. He seemed like, you know, I see what you brothers are talking about. And that was a real high for me. And it made me think that if we can just get these people to the table, then there's a possibility that through discussion, through putting up the numbers, putting up the charts, putting up the very things that many of us have been learning over the past 2-3 years, we're going to be able to sway them. Because how can you argue against the charts and the numbers and you're just giving your opinion? You're not going to be able to do it at all. So I think that in many cases, these people, they are amplify, or can be, let me say, amplifiers and megaphones for our message. Trying to get to them is the difficult part. And I do think that it's reckless that some of them jump out there without properly educating themselves. I'm going to say that. I think that it's reckless to do that. But on the same note, we got to find a way to get to these people and sit them down and talk to them, because we don't want to just keep talking to each other at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. Let me say this about them. I wouldn't say they're leaders. They may be leaders in the entertainment field, but not in the political space. But in the political space, they can be influencers. You see, that's one of the things that they're good at, is being influencers. And so if we could use them and their influence for the betterment of the group, I think that's the thing that we will be looking for. Like I said at the beginning, we want the people to be on message. We don't necessarily want to be fighting with all of these people. We want them to be on mess. We want them to be with us, you know what I'm saying, all on one accord, so that we can move together and they can help with what they have possessed, which is agency, man. You know, they got agency that we don't have. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And what Abba was talking about really hits on a personal note to me, because as you brothers can bear witness to, I was resistant to the information at first. I wasn't someone, and I'm not no dumb person. You understand? And by the time I got the ADOS information, not even the ADOS information, but when I first heard about it, I was born and raised Pan-African, a child of Black Panther upbringing. You understand? So I was, Pan-Africanism was in my heart. I had read all of the Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Van Sertima, Diop, all of that. That was what I had. So, you know, no one is going to think that is going to just, anyone who's really serious about education and learning and unfolding, they're not just going to throw that stuff away because you told them to. You have to really take your time and understand. They have to be willing to actually, you know, go through the information. So when my brothers came to me with the information, I didn't know nothing about Tone and Yvette. I didn't know nothing about ADOS. I wasn't looking for that at that particular time. But what I do is I said, you know what? They argue with me. I didn't go quiet. I didn't go easy. It was pulling teeth and kicking and screaming. But I got into the information, and I said, you know what? This information is right, and this information is where is what our people need right now, and what we've always needed. And I submitted to the information. So we have to understand, it's not about personality. It's about what position are you trying to put yourself in to enhance the plight of the people. So I didn't care. Like, I'm like, okay, well, I know my brothers are intelligent brothers, and I've been with these brothers for years. So I said, if they're so hardcore on this ADOS thing and this whole framing of the information like that, let me give it a try. So I had to be patient. I had to be humble. I had to humble myself, sit down, and go over the information. I said, you know what, you brothers is 100% right and exact. And if we could get other people to do that, I think that will have the same effect, because I was just as obstinate and resistant when I first heard it. I said, I don't want to hear none of that, man. What you talking about? Pan-Africanism is it. That was me. I was fighting hard. We was having all the arguments. I was arguing with
we was getting it in. It was crazy
with my brothers. You know what I'm saying? And they was like, man, what's up with this dude? But it didn't. The arguing is not what did it. Their arguing with me is not what won me over. But them being who they are to me said, you know what? I'm going to take time out and look at the information. The information is what changed me. So the information speaks for itself. So if we could just get people the information, you understand? Maybe that will change them. You know, so the information don't have no personality that you can be upset with. The information is just raw facts. You know what I mean? So now Logic is a reparationist fighting for this ADOS to get its ancestral debt paid. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So Q, man, I mean, like this is some other brothers going in on the plan, and we have to give criticism. We doing our job as reparationists. So it's our job as a reparationist is to create more reparationists. That's what we need to do. We need to create enough reparationists until we create reparations. And that's what Be the Power is about. We want to become the power, so we want to be the power, so we can say we the power, and then we can manifest the things, so we can have the power. You know, the things that have the power manifest. And man, I just want to say, you came in kicking and screaming. I came in like, oh, yeah, I'm already down. You know, my background is stories about the ancestors. You know, especially on my mom's end. You know, we didn't really go to church, so my mom never went to church like that. But the gospel I got was from like stories, gospel from the ancestor. You know, my great grandfather, my grandfather, this and that. So I knew our Adolf's story. I knew that background, and so when I saw this, it just clicked immediately. I was like, oh yeah, this is it right here.
Yo, I gotta say this. We got another brother that's MIA a little bit right now, but when we get him in, you're gonna see it go to another level, because that brother's brilliant as well. But you know, he's we've been
trying to get him on, and now that he's in the chat and listening, I guess this is the best way for us to shout directly at him. Shout out to my brother Grim, aka Master Grim, aka the Mystic.
You know, we always got the vacant seat dressed up waiting for you. You know what that means. You got the vacant seat for him.
Like when we start getting into, like, because I want to do a segment like at least once or twice a month where we start getting into ADOS giants, because this is what the sons and daughters of freedmen is about. It's about reviving our history, resuscitating that ADOS history. And my brother Grim, man, there's not too many names you could pull up from the past that he won't be able to just run down off the top of his head something about that person. I'll be like, I knew this guy was going to know exactly about this dude. So I definitely would like to do that as well. One of the things that we're going to do with the sons and daughters of freedmen is we're going to branch that out. We're going to be the answer to PragerU. Y'all, we're going to have Freedmen U popping real soon. So we're going to be putting out the calls for, you know, just for a lot of people that are educated and may have degrees, et cetera, particularly in history, great researchers, et cetera, to come in and help us build this thing up, build the website up. I done started on the website myself. I'm waiting for a few logos to get done so that I could like really put the thing together and put it out there so that just people could see the framework of it while we're waiting for our 501c3 determination letter. So we're making moves. Be the power, family. Be the power. I'm gonna go back around to my bros. We 2 hours and 14 minutes into this discussion. For those that did come late, today's discussion was about Ice Cube's. So the sister said, "Don't use Ice Cube's consultant." Laugh out loud. Yeah, you know, I don't know who brother Ice Cube was talking to and put that document together, but brother Ice Cube, if you do ever come across this video, come holler at us. And I believe that we could set you in the right direction. There are many giants that we laud on this show that we can point you to as well. And we have to make brothers like that reparationists at the end of the day. Our leaders will be the ones that are in the political space. Those will be our leaders, but we're going to need all of the voices that we can promoting this reparations program. So, Brother Josh, I'm going to start with you, Brother Ali. Matter of fact, Brother Ali, because you ain't really build too
I had
much.
a quick question for you.
All right, got it, brother.
Did that one guy flake?
Was it supposed to be tonight or?
No, not tonight. We might do that Thursday. Okay. I want to see what time Yvette Carnell's book club is going to start as well, because I don't know if she does that early or not, because I didn't get a chance to get into that book because I've been into From Here to Equality like crazy. Mm-hmm. And I just haven't been able to get into that book. So I definitely want to check that out. So I'm going to see if she starts her usual time, then we can get him to come on. But I don't want it to just be that one guy. I would like to have a couple of the European Americans, AKA white people, AKA anti-reparationists. We have one person who has committed to come on and have a conversation with him and just simply show and prove from our end and have him show and prove from his end. And we'll see which information stands tall at the end of it. So, Brother Ali, if you want to go in and give us a closing statement.
About the Ice Cube piece, I do think it was a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of stuff thrown together. I know Brother Logic called it some Mr. Potato Head type of stuff. It's funny. But yeah, I say it was a hodgepodge of a bunch of things thrown together. They're not all bad ideas. I think some of the ideas are okay. They would just have to try to figure out how to implement some of that stuff. I think some of it belongs with a black agenda. You know, I don't think it's reparations, and some of the reparation stuff needs to be separated. And I do think that the book From Here to Equality would help them to kind of figure out how to approach that stuff. You know, I'm with the doctor on this. I think there is some good stuff. It's not all bad. I think there's some good ideas in there, but I do think that it was thrown together, and we'll see what happens from this point. Maybe it'll get better. I don't know.
Indeed, brother Josh.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, this is a good bill. This is a good conversation. You know, I think it's the kind of conversation that you need to have when you see something that you need to be critical of, coming from somebody who's a prominent person. At the same time, you know, we still, this person has a right to express themselves, and we have a right to come behind. It's our job as reparationists to come behind and express how we feel about it. And I just hope that if the response can be received in a way where it doesn't breed resentment or retaliation, not retaliation, obviously, but resentment and disillusionment, because you come out and you try to put something out that you feel, and now I'm giving the brother the benefit of the doubt, not knowing his real intent, or not knowing him as a person. I don't want to traffic in any type of just guesswork about the intent, or based on some prior character demonstrations, or whatever the case may be, or an interpretation of how somebody's character was. So I just say this: so if it was a genuine, honest attempt to make something that you think is going to be good for the people, like, we shouldn't, it shouldn't be demeaned. And if your intent is really to get it right, you should receive the criticism not as a shot or take it personal. We're criticizing the information, we're criticizing policy, because at the end of the day, we're reparationists. We want to get this thing right. And we don't need, I don't want to say that, but I just gotta say, we don't need a policy. We don't need something that can come out and water down reparations. We need everybody to be on hold, everybody to be supporting pure reparations, to be supporting a reparations program. And we don't need something that is going to end up being a distraction from that. Like, the thing is reparations. You can say a Black agenda. You're going to say that separately. Just like Ali said, I don't think they should be put together. And yeah, man, this is good though. I appreciate people in the space when they could be quiet, and maybe sometimes they should, until they get the proper information. But everybody has a right to express themselves, and if the intent is sincere, I appreciate the effort. And so let's keep working till we get this thing right, till we get you on the page of being a reparationist.
That's right, brother Logic, Dr. Logic.
Yo, yeah. So, family, we talked about the cube thing. I want to close out like this, right? HR 40 has not disappeared. Before it gets the action, the movement, right? We have to understand what we need to do. HR 40 is a criminal operation. We have to understand that. HR 40 is a criminal operation. We need all reparationists hands on deck. We need everybody look up the bill, look at all the co-sponsors, see where these congresspersons are from. I don't care if they're not from where you're from. We need to, one, call all of the congresspersons and be on them and tell them, listen, HR 40 needs to be rewritten, point blank, period. HR 40 needs to be rewritten in accordance with Dr. Darity's testimony and the edits and critiques that he made on the particular piece, right? We need to not only do that, we need to email. All of them have public email. We need to email all of them a copy of Dr. Darity's testimony and his critique on the legislation. Understand how bad HR 40 is, and if that thing is able to be moved forward, how detrimental it will be. We need everybody telling a friend, and we need help from our friends to tell everybody, call the co-sponsors and tell them, listen, we know most of y'all are up for re-election. You won't be a co-sponsor next year if you don't get behind this thing. You'll be just another citizen sitting and watching what happens, just like the rest of us, because we about offering political consequences for our demand. You understand? So we need to understand, we need to email all of the co-sponsors on the bill, the testimony from Dr. Darity. We need to email and we need to call them over and over again. It's phone banking time. Not just when it's time for elections, it's time for political action. We need a phone bank and call up these co-sponsors and say, we need HR 40 rewritten, or you need to take your name off the co-sponsor of it. Remove your name stop sponsoring the bill. Get off of the bill. You understand? Because it's not pure reparations. It's a farce. It's a crime. So I'm going to close out with that message. And we have to have a congressional focus. That's where a lot of the nefarious deeds are being done. We have to be focused on a congressional. I'm just telling you, if you don't get focused on that Congress, it's gonna hurt. All right. So that's what I got for you. I'm a reparationist and I'm out.
Definitely. Shout out to the team. Be the power. Shout out to the whole ADOS family that's in the chat. Shout out to all of the reparationists. We had to do this show tonight and touch on some. I mean, I didn't even get to. Let me. Okay, look. Let me bring this up real quick. This is in Cubes' document. Shoot to wound policy in event of unarmed suspect, fleeing suspect that poses an imminent danger only, or if deadly force is unnecessary. This whole sentence confused me. Shoot to wound policy in event of unarmed suspect. Why would you be shooting to wound an unarmed suspect? Now, I could be reading this wrong, but it says shoot to wound policy in event of unarmed suspect, fleeing suspect, and then it has a parenthetical that says, or in parentheses, that poses an imminent danger only, or if deadly force is unnecessary. I just don't think that whoever put this together really thought this thing through. That aspect didn't make no sense to me. Maybe, just maybe, I'm reading something wrong. That's possible. That's possible. But it's clear in the text, shoot to wound, policy in event of unarmed suspect, fleeing suspect that poses an imminent danger only, or if deadly force is unnecessary. Why would you be shooting to wound someone if deadly force is unnecessary? I don't understand what this means. Unarmed suspect, fleeing suspect that poses an imminent danger. Oh, this just doesn't make any sense. And some of these things in here, it's a hodgepodge of bits and pieces of other people's work mixed with somebody's own ideas and opinions on what they would like to see. It doesn't look like a consensus was reached in the drafting of this document. And, I say that the document is unnecessary, that it's not needed. If you're going to call for reparations, then we already have that plan, right? We have the book From Here to Equality written by Professor Dr. Sandy Darity and his wife, Kirsten Mullen. We already have that book. We already have movement through the ADOS movement. The very reason why reparations is a national discussion in the first place. We don't need people coming on trying to divert the attention from reparations by putting something out there that really doesn't make too much sense. And maybe the brother doesn't know, right? I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't know about ADOS. I can say that he might not know about Darity's book From Here to Equality. Well, if he's watching this, now you know, brother. Now you know. And plus, when he did the tweet, of course, ADOS is always on it. You just run through about the first 20, 30 tweets. It's the family going at him, letting them know that there's serious defects in his document. But we have to also get to the point where we can get a brother like that to the table and sit down and build with him and let him know just the things that we said tonight. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, brother. This document is problematic on many fronts. I see an economist by the name of Derek Hamilton. I see his name attached to this document, and it's even more baffling to me. It's even more baffling that you have an academic that has academic credentials. I go to his profile and I see his credentials. I'm like, wow, I don't know if he read the whole thing or if he just threw his name on it. I'm confused. But this document is not it, family. This is something that'll never work for our people at all. It's just not to me, it's not a sound plan when you add Jews and you add Native Americans into what it is that we're trying to do specifically. And, we had to talk about that tonight. Brother Mitchell Walthor said Derek Hamilton co-authored What We Get Wrong About Closing the Racial Wealth Gap. That's correct. His name is one of the several that's on that document. So I don't understand I'm confused.
The document says he did the preface.
Just the preface, okay.
So,
but my thing is, right, I wouldn't put a document out and let's just use Dr. Sandy Darity's name. I'm not going to put a Dr. Sandy Darity's preface on my own bunch of opinions and what I would like to see happen. I'm just not going to do something like that. To me, that's just irresponsible. I wouldn't do it. So, and I don't think that a professor or someone that has the academic credentials of a Dr. Darity, right? And I'm not just trying to single him out. I'm just talking about any credentialed economist will look at something like that and say, you know what, just go ahead and put it out. We'll figure out the rest later. That's irresponsible scholarship. And those of us that study scholarship know that there's a specific methodology that you use when you're drafting papers, period. So I'm just confused, and we had to come on here and talk about this thing tonight. So hopefully this discussion leads to some type of greater discussion with that brother Ice Cube. I would even like to have Derek Hamilton come on the show. Why not? You know, there's a part that Josh was touching on about closing the racial wealth gap at the middle or at the top, at the median or at the mean, right? And that's a debate that needs to be had. My brother Josh is.
I'm not debating.
You a debater?
Hey, nah. I need a little bit more
I don't know.
skills. I need a little bit more back.
You let the economist.
I let the economists debate. If I were to debate, I would be debating coming from like more of a social aspect than an economic aspect. But based on what we know, like I'm not gonna let you promote something that is against the best interests of my people. I'm gonna have to give my criticism.
Sound like a debate.
Okay, all right, cool.
That sound like a debate.
Call it what you want. I just say I want to let the economists debate.
I feel you on that. I feel you on that. I definitely feel
PhD.
I feel you on that. I feel you on that.
I want him. You know, I don't even want to set up that type of verses. But if it had to come to the median,
get the economic verses, the economist versus.
It can be positive. It can be positive.
No, that's true. That's true. I like that. So, you know, we're gonna close it out tonight, family. We said what was needed to be said. HR 40 is coming up on a chopping block. We might do a show Thursday. We might bring on some of the people that I'm calling trolls, because that's exactly what they were doing. Brother Otis in the chat said Hamilton left ADOS camp over mean versus median. I mean, I don't think that's a reason that anyone should step away because of a disagreement like that. But I mean, it is what it is. We're going to close out with the motto, and that motto is don't just fight the power, become the power. And then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, say peace.